Welcome to the Nobles Talk Show. On today's show, we discuss ethics, patriotism, and the law. Stay tuned, like and subscribe for more.
Hello, viewers, listeners, welcome to the Nobles Talk Show. It's yet another episode, and we're having our powerful guest in the house, Mr. Bill Wonger. And today we're going to be talking about something that affects the society so greatly, and it impacts us in one way or the other, which is the civics studies in America. And we'll be talking also on the ethics part of it. So before we dive deep down into these topics, I would like you to also share, subscribe, also like. Drop comments because those comments are very, very important. They're encouraging to this channel. Welcome once more to the Nobles Talk Show. Welcome, Mr. Bill Wonger.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me on again. I think the viewers will be used to my face on the show because we have planned to do a lot for this season. And today's topic is kind of tied to the last topic. So I think we'll be able to connect properly. And since we're discussing civics and ethics today, those are things that are taught in school. And we focused last time on how religion was taken out of public schools. But another thing that we've noticed is that civics over time has also been taught less in schools and has declined over the years. And today we see the lowest point of civics being taught in schools, elementary school, middle school, university, colleges. Civics in schools now is a choice rather than a complementary, like a compulsory subject.
Yeah. And civics is actually very important. What is civics all about? Civics has to do with you or the students or citizens understanding how the society functions. It has to do with the political decisions that are being made. Also, how individuals participate in political process. Also understanding the laws of the land, how the government is being governed. With this understanding, it's going to help the citizens or the students to partake in their community, probably the way they vote and things like that. It gives you a full understanding for you to be a full participant in the society. And looking at how the society of America or the nation of America is right now, we realize that so many people don't even know how civics affects their lives, the knowledge about civics. So that's why we're going to dive into it today to make the people understand how important it is. So any information that you can give us, Mr. Bill, on what you understand about the civics?
So we'll just give a rundown of what we're going to be doing today so that we stay on track. So we're going to talk about civics in general, like we've done, introduce the topic. We're going to talk about the government structure, how the government is structured, because most people don't understand how the government is structured. And they don't understand how laws are passed, how policies are passed, who has a say over certain laws and who doesn't. And we'll also talk about the relevance and the importance of civics in our society. And also we'll do a quick assessment of some of the laws and amendments in the United States because we're talking about civics in the United States. And we'll also focus on the aspect of patriotism. And we'll react to a couple of videos related to civics and ethics so that we can give our audience an understanding of how civics and ethics affects our daily life. Now, just to start with it, civics, as you define, encompasses of everything from the laws, the rights of the individuals, the structure of the government. But civics also focuses on the history of the nation.
Yep.
It also focuses on the shared core values of the nation. So when civics is taught less, we tend to find out that the society has a lot of people with different core values,
Yeah.
different narratives about the history of the nation.
And sometimes they act against the law without knowing.
Yes. And different understanding of how the society is supposed to work. Not how the, because now we're in an era where almost everything is subjective. People prefer to understand society, how they feel about it, rather than how it's supposed to work on a normal basis. So I think we'll have a good chat on this. So let's dive into the intro. So what can you tell us about how civics education is taught in schools? Because that was the main thing that drew our attention. So
actually, over the years, we realized that civic education in schools has actually declined. And it has declined so much so that the students growing up becoming adults and going into higher institution know less of what their country is all about. It all began with this decline is as a result of we'll just skip across certain things. We can go in details in the future. When there was an introduction of No Child is Left Behind Act, when this act was introduced as part of the laws of America, it affected certain schools so much so that time was taken away from studies of civics and put into other subjects. So as a result, many students could not learn what civics is all about. They could not learn more about the structure of their country, and they could not learn how they can participate in their communities. And as a result of this, people have the tendency of believing that the government owes them. They don't understand they too can give something into the community to help the community grow. They all depend on how the government is being run. And it will be surprising to know that most people don't even know the branches of government they have in this country. Statistically, when you go along the streets and you ask certain people, they can't even tell you what are the branches of government in the country, which is very surprising. It's as a result of civics decline in our schools. So those are certain things that really affect us as a society. And when we look at the society today, you realize that some people don't even know the laws of this country and they act opposite to these laws. Some, even if you tell them they believe what they do, it's correct, they go against the laws because they lack that education from the base. So from what I did look up, those are the things that are affecting our society today. If you have some more things to add on to it, you can chip in.
So you said something about people always thinking that the nation owes them a lot, without necessarily thinking that they owe a lot to the nation. And I have this famous speech. I think we should watch it. Because many young Americans don't understand that rooted in civics is patriotism. You cannot get out of a nation what you don't put into it. You have to cherish the nation. You have to cherish the opportunities the nation offers to you. And you have to put in the best. Because if every time you put in the bare minimum, like many people, they don't want to be positively contributing to the society. They contribute negatively mostly. So most of their experiences they get afterwards are negative. And I have this JFK speech at the inauguration that I'm around to listen to. And it's very touching because this is a very patriotic speech from a president. I think we'll start it over again to see.
And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. My fellow citizens of the world, ask not what America will do for you, but what together we can do for the freedom of man. Finally, whether you are citizens of America or citizens of the world, ask of us here the same high standards of strength and sacrifice which we ask of you. With a good conscience, our only sure reward, with history the final judge of our deeds, let us go forth to lead the land we love, asking his blessing and his help, but knowing that here on earth, God's work must truly be our own.
And that's a really patriotic speech.
Yep.
Because that was JFK speaking at his inauguration, and he said, "Do not ask what your country has to do for you. Ask what you can do for your country." So rooted in civics is patriotism, and if civics is not taught in schools, institutions, there's no promotion of civics in society. We tend to have a lot of individuals in society who are not patriotic to the nation. You know, when we sing the national anthem, they say the land of the free, the home of the brave, you have to understand that that anthem is sung with a spirit of patriotism. Like when I listened to the Super Bowl national anthem section, I think it's Charlie Puth, and it was so emotive for me because I love what the United States is all about. And I have some degree of patriotism to the United States. And that's what most people lack. And you can't blame them because they were never taught how to love a nation. I know in the nations we come from, back home, they teach us civics from primary school to secondary school, and then you stop doing civics maybe in high school and university. But before that, civics is like a compulsory subject that everyone has to do. And it stirs patriotism in you. It makes you a more patriotic person. And it makes you a more loving person to that nation. Because when you're patriotic, you tend to try to do the best for the nation. You try to avoid being on the wrong side of the law. And you try to be a net positive to the society. But when you are not patriotic, on the other hand, you do all of what you're not supposed to do. And you become a burden to society rather than a net positive. So civics is really important to create people for society who will serve the nation and be a net positive to the nation.
Yeah, that's very true. We can actually see that there are so many people that want to gain something from the government, but they can't put in, and they don't feel remorse about what they are doing. Coming back to the government structure, there are three branches in the government. As we have the executive, the legislative, and the judicial part of the government. All of these branches hold powers that can actually override the other. And it is very important for people to understand what these branches are all about and how they function. It is very important. Without this understanding, you might think one overrides the other or one is usurping the powers of the other. The executive branch is handled by the president, that is the commander-in-chief. The legislative branch is handled by those in Congress, that is the congressmen and the Senate. And the judicial has to do with the Supreme Court. The legislative, they do make the laws. The judicial, they interpret the law. Why the executive implements the law. And sometimes people see the implementation of the law because they didn't actually study civics. They will think that implementation is wrong. That is what we are having right now in our society. When we look at what is being done, you might not like it, but it is the law. That is why most of the times when these cases go to court, they lose it, because people go on a rampage thinking that is wrong, but based on the law, it is correct. So when people begin to come to the understanding of how these branches function and the laws of the country, they will see certain things and know this is what it's supposed to be done. And because of the lack of civic studies in our schools, the generation that is growing up lacks this understanding of how these things do function, which is very, very important. Because as citizens, we have roles to play. We have the right to vote. We need to obey the laws of the country. We need to participate in building a positive community or a growing community that has a positive impact in the lives of the people in this community. So civics is very important. And I pray that this country brings in, let's say, giving about 80% of our curriculum. Let them put in some time into it, because that time has actually been reduced because of the No Child Left Behind Act. As a result of that thing has declined so badly, and it's not very positive on the part of the people of America. So what else can you actually tell us about your research about civics?
So three things, as I heard you speak. We are not challenging the No Child Left Behind Act, because that was a very positive act when it was passed in 2001. Because the No Child Left Behind Act it serves as a base to create competition between students by testing them with subjects like maths, English, and sciences and all of that. But with this focus on the subjects that are being tested, that's when the civics taught in schools was reduced. But that's still a positive. But sometimes you have a positive effort and it has some negatives that come with it. So the No Child Left Behind Act, the backlash, the negative that comes with it is the fact that it reduced the amount of time put into teaching civics, since civics wasn't one of the subjects that were tested. But that act was a very good act for the nation, because it has created a lot of scientists, a lot of people who create businesses and all of that, who have raised the economic standard of the nation. And secondly, we spoke about the structure of government. And what you said, which is very important that we have to understand, is the structure in government is that the government is made in such a way that there are checks and balances. And one arm of government is not superior to the other. So people tend to get so worried about what one arm of government is doing without understanding that the whole, the structure of government is a coalition. Like one arm can decide something. I've seen instances where the president decides something today and in Congress it doesn't pass, or it passes in Congress, in the Senate is held up, and it can even pass through both of them. The executive and the legislative can agree on something, and it is taken to the judiciary, and the judiciary disagrees, and that policy is not implemented. So most people react to what one arm of government is doing without understanding that the system is made of checks and balances. And if a policy passes, going through all the three arms of government, you understand that based on the interpretation by each arm of government, that policy is positive for the nation.
And becomes a law.
Yes. And what we have to understand is laws and policies are not made by individuals. We vote the individuals to represent us, but we can't have an individual say. Each person cannot have a say in what laws and policies have to be passed. Because we know how the Congress system works. At some point in time, there's a majority of Democrats. At some point in time, there's a majority of Republicans. The same thing with the Senate. The only arms that are free from those biases is the judiciary. And most of the times, if something passes through the judiciary and is approved, passes through the Supreme Court and is approved, then that policy tends to be positive for the nation. So when we are being taught civics, what happens with civics is that Civics will teach us to understand that the blame is not on one arm of government, because each arm of government has their role to play. But we have outrage all the time. We have debates depending on what arm of government passes what policy. Like, for example, Congress can pass a law, or Congress, like the recent time we heard Congress, they shut down the government. And when they shut down the government, we see this political game where each person keeps blaming the other side. This side shut down the government. This other side shut down the government. But if you study civics, you understand that some things like that happen in Congress because they are trying to get to a coalition. They're trying to get to a point where everybody is satisfied, because each congressperson will want to do something for their constituents. So they are going there as representatives. So it's not only about which side is right or which side is wrong. We have to understand that in the civics of a nation, in how the government structure is, most things are done with checks and balances. That's how government structure is. And anytime the checks and balances are taken out, that's when there's an abuse of the laws.
Actually, that's very true, because most of the times people go on a crazy rampage, going on the streets, burning down things. Well, that you burning down things doesn't actually make it correct, or it doesn't actually reflect what the nation, the laws of the nation are actually talking about. For example, when we look at today, people go on crazy rampage about ICE, and some are talking about ICE needs to be abolished. It is a process. And ICE is actually working based on the laws of the country. Those laws were being instituted by those in Congress, and it was signed by the president. And that's why so many times when these laws get to the Supreme Court or to appeal court, certain things are being dropped because they know these people are operating under the law that was given to them to operate. So it is very important for us to really understand how a country functions, and that is by civics education. Most importantly, people fail to understand that a president only functions based on the laws that are being passed in the nation. The president never goes out of the constitutional laws. That is why Congress is an important part of it. The president executes the laws of the nation. The judicial, they interpret those laws. And that's where the whole people are accountable for their actions.
Exactly.
So it's very important for people to know these differences. That's why sometimes actually all the time, it's always important to participate in the electoral process, most especially on the state level, because at the state level, we vote for our senators, we vote for our congressmen. So those are the people that represent, and when they get into the Congress, they make the laws, they vote on those laws, and if passed, the president is going to sign it. And when the president signs it, that is what it is. So people, when we get to understand these things, will realize that it is good to study civics of this nation. And knowing it, it's going to be helpful in the upcoming elections. Let people actually go do some research on how these branches of government function. And we should also know that we as individuals, we have roles also to play, because civics has to do with educational debate. Nowadays, we can't even debate with people in a civilized way without people calling others names.
True. And also, if you go through, you notice that one of the bases of civics is ethical participation, meaning you can listen, you can debate, you can have civil discourse.
Yeah, critical thinking.
I have one of my favorite phrases from last election was policy over proxy, which definitely is talking about how you should be able to do some research, find out what policies a candidate proposes, find out what policies a congressperson proposes, what policy an elected official proposes before voting for them. It's not by party, but by policy.
Yep.
Like, it's what can this person accomplish for me? Now, every individual has a vote. There's no influence of voting. You can that's a right of every individual. Every individual under the law has a vote. Every citizen under the law, to precise, has a vote. And your vote is personal. So you have to, don't let anybody pressure you into voting someone that will not accomplish what you see as acceptable policies. Everybody has a different interpretation of a policy. Everybody has a different interpretation of what an elected official can do for them. But since you have your vote, you should do the research. Let people do the research before they go vote. Because most of the times we're being swayed by social media interactions, trending topics, but that is not how a citizen or someone with a civic background acts in a period of election. And voting is a duty of a civilian. Voting is a duty. And there are other things that civilians do, like you can participate in jury duty, you can have other small community actions. But voting is one of the most important because it decides what policies and laws are going to be implemented that will affect your life directly. So that's one thing we have to focus on as citizens of the nation.
Yep.
And one thing too is understanding the law.
Yeah, very important.
What I would say is
Very
go as far as you can to understand the law. Laws are written. You can search the Constitution online and not be misled by anyone's interpretation of the law. Go and read the law, read what the Constitution was built on, read the lines in between and understand what the Constitution is saying. Because sometimes what I can say is law is subjective. It can be interpreted differently by different people. And some people interpret the law with the mind to bend it. Like they're trying to find a loophole in the law, or they're trying to find a way to criticize the law without really understanding what the law was created for. For example, we'll talk about the most common one, the First Amendment, which is the freedom of speech. But freedom of speech, there is what you are free to say what you can, but you are not free of the consequences of what you say. So you can't just say anything anywhere. There are places where you say certain things and there are places where you don't. That's why even in court, right, you can be testifying as a witness or that you're being questioned. But one thing they tell you is you cannot perjure yourself in court. That's almost a crime. But most people don't understand that there are some limitations to what you can say and when you can say them.
Yep.
And every time someone speaks falsity, lies, and all of that, they tend to cover themselves by saying it's freedom of speech. But in that case, there's freedom of speech, but the consequences will still have to be arraigned on you because you use the speech, but you didn't use it in the right context. So what we have to understand is laws apply to certain contexts. So you can't really say, I'm applying this law based on the context you choose. There was a reason why that law was added to the Constitution. There was a reason why that law was implemented. So go the mile to find out why that law was added and why the law was implemented and how to apply that law.
Very true.
Yeah.
Actually, that freedom of speech thing is driving people crazy, and people say so many crazy stuffs, not knowing that consequences are on their way coming. You know, you can't just say anything anyhow. That's why they'll take you to court and they will hold you accountable for what you said. And it is also very important because when you study the civics, it gives you the ability to do some critical thinking. That critical thinking requires you to go do researches about what you are talking about or what is being said. Nowadays, since there is social media, people just go ahead and get things from people on social media, what they say, and they take it at face value, saying, oh, that what that man is saying, that's the truth. But based on the law of the country, you are completely wrong. That's why we don't need to take everything being said as face value. That is why I will always like you to drop comments on what you think in reference to your research about civics and the laws of this nation. Please like, subscribe, and also share. Don't forget, it is very important. Critical thinking, it requires you to really see, is this thing the correct thing? Is this person saying something that will add value unto me? Based or looking at the law, is he correct by saying what he's saying? It is very important.
And so one of my favorite of all the laws that I studied and tried to understand the context was the 14th Amendment, which is equality, citizenship, and modern rights. And the 14th Amendment focuses on, birthright, citizenship. Everybody is equal under the law, and everybody deserves due process at state level. And there are limits to what the state can do regarding your rights. Right. But now, what most people don't understand is when they say everybody is equal under the law, not everybody has the same status under the law.
Definitely true.
Because we can be equal under the law, but my status under the law will be different to that of another person.
Very true.
And based on that status, will be treated differently under the law. Because, again, we said some people use the subjectivity aspect of the law, and like we have seen many times on both party lines, where a particular law is used to prosecute an opponent because the subjectivity aspect of the law has been applied. Because we have to understand that once your status under the law changes, different laws apply to you. A particular law can be made for someone, but based on your status, that law doesn't apply to you. For example, we're talking about here the 14th Amendment. The 14th Amendment covers birthright citizenship. But if someone comes to the United States with the aim of tourism birth, like for example, they come to the United States with the aim of tourism birth, you tend to see people argue that based on the 14th Amendment, that person should be a U.S. citizen, right?
Yep.
But in some regard, it's subjective because it depends on what executive laws have been passed at the time.
Yeah.
If a particular president says, okay, children born through tourism birth cannot be considered citizens of the United States. That's the law that has been passed. If it was taken through the Supreme Court and the Supreme Court approved that law, it doesn't go against the Constitution. It just helps to create balance because every law that is created can be exploited in some ways. So you try to avoid the law being exploited. And that's why we have to understand that laws are equal for all of us, but our status under the law is what decides how that law will be applied to us as individuals.
Yeah. When you look at civics, it has a link or relationship with ethics.
Yes.
Because ethics is all about the studies of morals, knowing the wrong from the right, good from bad. And when you look at ethics in relation to civics, you realize that when it comes to law, you need to be on the good side. Your morals need to be on the good side for you to avoid being held up or being locked up. That's why we have certain cases of people not even respecting law enforcement because their moral aspect or the ethical aspect of them is being missing. When you see the police pull you over, the moral thing to do is to respect everything this law enforcement officer asks you to do. Please, sir, put your hand on your steering wheel, keep the hand over there. Can I have your driver's license and registration? Just give it to him. Don't go back and forth with him. Some people even keep arguing until what was supposed to take 2 minutes or a minute goes up to kind of 10, 30 minutes, and it ends up being arrested over something that you should have just be ethically responsible for that action by doing the correct thing, respecting the law, going on the good side of morals. So what actually do you think about that?
So I'll share from personal experience. I've been pulled over by the police once for something I'm not really proud of, which is speeding. And when I was stopped, I had to park on the side of the road, and the policeman came over and he was like, license and registration. I asked the policeman, I'm going to be reaching out to the glove compartment to take out my wallet.
Some people don't even do that.
I have to explain because movement is subjective too.
Yep.
If a policeman says license and registration, and I'm sending my hand towards the glove compartment, I should alert him, because for the police own safety, he might think I'm trying to retaliate.
Yeah.
Because they have seen many cases like that. There has been a precedence of cases like that. So one policeman will not want to lose his life due to negligence. So I alerted him. I'm like, I'm reaching into my glove compartment to take out my wallet, in which my license is found. And when I gave him, I said, I'm going to get the registration on the other side. And he took it, went to the police vehicle, did some scans, took a couple minutes, gave me the license and the registration back and said, hey, you were over speeding. Thank you for cooperating, but I have to give you a ticket, which I didn't find fun, but that is the law. And what happens is my status under the law was different, like we spoke about. At the time I got pulled over, I was breaking the law.
Yep.
So the ticket came after as a consequence of breaking the law. If I was driving at normal speed and I got pulled over, the consequence of the law will not apply to me, because my status under the law is being an obedient driver to the speed laws. But then if I went over the speed limit, so it means I disobeyed the speed law, so my status under the law had changed. So that's what most people don't understand with law is. The problem is not the law being applied to you. The problem is, what is your status under the law at that given time?
Are you on the right side or you're on the wrong side?
If you're on the right side of the law, you have nothing to worry about, and you deserve to be treated like someone who has not committed any crime. It's always innocent until proven guilty. And that's why I had to wait for the officer to explain, to know what my problem was. And when the officer explained, I understood, because I was driving the car and I was honest. I knew that I was above the speed limit. So most people, based on dishonesty too, understand their status under the law, but don't want the consequences of going against the law.
Yeah, it is very important. You know, we talk more about like relating it to the first episode. You know, it is very important that we study this civics and ethics, because with it, it's going to make the society a better place. When we understand how these things function and we are on the good side of morals, some people have their own interpretation of good and bad, but there is a standard thing. Good will always remain good. Bad will always remain bad, no matter how you twist it. Always be on the good side. And by doing some critical thinking, researches, studying, you will see the things that is required of you to do as a citizen of this nation, as someone that is lawful in this nation to do. Because without that, you have consequences that will come your way. So it is a very important thing for the nation to put in something into the educational system that will improve on the studies of civics and ethics, because with that, we're going to make this nation a better place, and will become what the video we watched, the president spoke about, what you give for the country to become a better place, not just what you consume. Nowadays, we have so many people consuming. You're depleting from the nation. You're not adding. So let's actually do some critical thinking, studies about civics and ethics, and it's going to help us a great deal. Something you want to add on to it?
So we're just talking about what you do for the nation. As a citizen, you always have to be a net positive to your nation. When you have a home and cherish it, when you acquire a home, you put in all effort, you see a little crack, you try to fix it, all of that. That is how you're supposed to react to your nation, because no one else is going to fix it if you don't do it. You have to fix your nation. But when they say fix the nation, you don't have to take it to an extreme. Like you see things like people sometimes burning down flags.
Oh, that's a part
because they are mad about a particular policy. There are different ways, there are different approaches to fixing what is going wrong in the country. If you feel that something is going wrong in the country, you have options like voting. You have other options like calling your Congress representative, calling your senators to act, because those are the people who represent you in making the laws in Congress. And most of the times, you have many options at hand rather than going to an extreme. Because when you go extreme to fix a problem, there is always extreme retaliation. And when there's extreme retaliation to an extreme cause, there's always a misfortune. Like we see in many of the cases related to ICE and, protests and all of that. Those are not scenes we want to see.
Yeah.
Because those things are fueled by people who sought to divide the nation, and not people who want to build the nation. And as citizens, we have to be smarter than what we see online, because most people just want to sow chaos in the nation, and they don't live in the nation to bear the consequences of the chaos.
Not at all.
So we have to be a net positive to the society, and we have to follow the laws and apply them in the right context. We have to know, and we precise again, know your status under the law so that you know how to apply the law and how the law applies to you.
Yeah, yes, very important.
And we have seen a lot of this. We talked about the decline of civics, and one common example we have seen is a young athlete in the Olympics. I think we might have to watch this to see what we're talking about. We're talking about patriotism, and we see a young athlete in the Olympics who's talking about his nation that he's representing. I don't think this athlete has been taught civics, because I hear from the speech, it's all about me, not my nation, not the United States. It's me. So let's just watch it, and we'll see what you think about it. I'll want to
right now, I think it's a little hard.
I'll start it over.
It brings up mixed emotions to represent the U.S. right now, I think. It's a little hard. There's obviously a lot going on that I'm not the biggest fan of, and I think a lot of people aren't. If it aligns with my moral values, I feel like I'm representing it. Just because I'm wearing the flag doesn't mean I represent everything that's going on in the U.S. So yeah, I just kind of want to do it for my friends and my family and the people that support me getting here. It brings up mixed emotions.
When I get the last statement, him talking about I do it for my friends and family, actually you're representing a nation. It is the nation that took you there, not your friends and family. So it's actually disgusting hearing him putting it that way. When you go out there to represent your country, there is something we used to say, don't wash your dirty linen in public. Let the issues in your house stay in your house. But when you go out, don't wash your dirty liniens out there, because you're not just telling something that happens in your family, you're telling people about who you are.
Yeah. And you're not only telling people about who you are, you're telling people your points of weakness.
Yeah.
And that's something I've noticed recently is everybody is so quick to criticize the nation without proposing any solutions, without being any net positive to the nation. Because if you are not a net positive to the nation, you shouldn't be someone criticizing the nation, because you're taking away from the system rather than giving to the system. So why do you criticize from a system that you take from? Now, this is a nation of opportunities, and as an athlete in the Olympics, it's a privilege to represent the United States. No matter what is going on at home in the country, when you step out to the Olympics, all you have to focus on is making yourself known by the world for your skill and making your nation shine. It has nothing to do with the politics. I've noticed one thing with celebrities and all the athletes and all of that. They tend to try to bring in politics into a skill-based system, because all they do is showcase their skills. And most of them don't even understand the politics.
Not at all.
Most of them don't understand the politics. But since they have sight and an audience, they tend to just speak out of proportion. And after that, when they have backlash, they complain about it. But what they have to understand is, though you have an audience, the audience is there for your skill. And if you can have a positive message for that audience, it should be something that will edify them, not something that will sow division in the nation. And you know that you have an audience, so anything you say can be blown out of proportion. I guarantee you, I don't think him representing the United States, he has any ill intentions. But whatever he said, how it has been perceived by many other individuals, and the chaos it has created, because some sides approve of what he says and other sides disapprove of what he says, the chaos it has created in the nation, it has created unrest, because most people love the narrative and others don't. And that is not how we as citizens have to perceive the law. That's not how we as citizens have to interact with the narratives around our country. We have to go for it, critically think, and know what is right and what is wrong, and know how to speak about it. Because they saying everything like this is freedom of speech. That's freedom of speech, but again, we have to remember that there are consequences to what we say. There are consequences. So an advice to him is he should, focus on representing the country and be proud, because some of us want to be where he is.
Yeah.
I would love to represent the United States one day. I would love to represent in something. Fortunately, hopefully in the Nobel Prize, I don't know, someday in the future. But I would love to represent the United States in something. And when I represent, I'll say, I'm doing this because the country gave me the opportunity. What most people don't understand is this is a land of opportunities. If the country gives you an opportunity, you don't then go and, down talk the country because you have some disagreement with certain policies. You have to lift the country up. You have to raise the banner of the country as you represent the country. That's how it is done. That's how a true patriot does it.
Yeah, that is very true. Thank you, viewers. Thank you, listeners. It is a privilege. Looking at all of these things, it boils down to one thing: the civics, education of the nation in relation to its ethical nature. Because with all of these put together, you realize that if you understand how the nation functions, you will not be taken aback by what people say. You will not be emotionally driven by what people say on social media. This is why we need to study the civics of this nation. We need to know how the nation functions. We need to know the laws of the nation. And in addition, Please be on the good side of morals. Don't be on the bad side. Thank you for tuning in. It is our privilege to discuss wonderful things like this with you. Please do not forget to subscribe, share, also drop comments. Tell us what you think. And if there are points of corrections too, please do not forget to drop it. We are all learning from each other in one way or the other. Thank you and see you in the next episode. Shalom.
Thank you.